The Merc has their own like series situation. They have a bar too.
Yeah, there was a bar downstairs, called Rivers.
Is there a bar at Nicey, Sean?
I don't think so. At the New York Stock Exchange, no.
So this is a Chicago thing. You guys are boozing.
So Steve, we were just in Chicago recently, and for the first time, I got to meet today's guest, Matt Kenah. For the first time, I never met him in person. I've been following him on Twitter for a long time. Unfortunately, you did not get to meet him. Your flight was late, which was a bummer. But Matt's an old school trader, man. He's been around probably longer than me. He traded on the floor, which I did not. But he's one of those old school guys. He's seen a lot. He's been through a lot, and he's seen a lot of highs. He's seen a lot of lows. These are the types of people that we want to have on this show to really dig deep into the trader life, right?
We could do a whole series on the early Chicago guys who we've had on the pod, right? There's been a number now, and I know we have another one. Isn't Anthony that way also?
Yeah, Anthony's that way as well.
A lot of you guys.
Yeah. So, one thing that you and Matt might bond over is there's a little bit of a Matt. We'll have him explain it, but he went to I think divinity school or was studying to do something in religion before he got into trading, which I'm very curious about. I know you have a little bit of background like that, a little bit.
Allow me to clarify. I'm not a priest and was never in school to be a priest, but thank you, Sean. Yes. Catholic school upbringing, I think is what you're referring to.
Hey, I've known you a long time, but I only just learned this recently, so I find this fascinating. All right, let's bring Matt on. Matt, welcome to the show, buddy. Thanks for making time to hang out with us.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Steve, for having me.
Hey, Matt. So we start with the priesthood because I don't know where better to start. Is that like the starting story?
I mean, I don't know. I didn't actually become a priest. I started working at the Chicago Mercantile Exchange right after high school. I graduated high school in 1986, and I went to a year after that. I drove a truck for my uncle. I played football a year in college, and I drove a truck on the south side of Chicago for my dad's brother. And my father told me I needed to figure something out. You can't make a living as a truck driver. And I told my dad, I said, if I drive a truck, I'll own the trucking company. If I bartend, I'll own the bar. So he said, well, then go figure something out. So you're not going to drive a truck. So there was a guy in my neighborhood that had got kicked out of the high school I went to that went to the Chicago Board of Options and became a really rich guy. So I said, I'll go do what Pat Geronda did. And that's what I did.
How did you get your foot in the board at an exchange? You were in high school?
I was just out of high school. So I had a friend of mine. The exchanges were, very neighborhoody and cliquey. I didn't know anybody on the floor. So I had a friend of mine that was a phone clerk, one of my oldest friends, still best friends with him, Frankie Bologna. Frankie was a phone clerk for Rosenthal. So he got me a job as a runner for what Rosenthal Collins became RCG, which is now Merrick's. So I ran making minimum wage for them, and I realized when I walked onto the trading floor that this is what I want to do. I don't know what this is, but this is awesome. And so I worked literally every job up. I became a runner. I became a deck holder. I learned how to do the hand signals. I became an arb clerk, and then I became a top-step arb clerk for the biggest broker in the front month Eurodollars. And that's when, after 3 years, I was making a bunch of money. I'm 20, 21, 22 years old, making a great living for anybody, let alone somebody still living at home. That's when I decided maybe there's something more than this. So I went to the Catholic seminary for 3.5 years. And the only reason I left, I would have left anyway. Celibacy was not my thing. I mean, if you broke celibacy, you had to be accountable to the rector before Sunday Mass, the rector of the seminary. I was down there every Sunday. Father, I got to talk to you. Door open or door closed? Closed. But I left because my mother had gotten lung cancer, and I took a leave of absence, and I went back to the Merc right away. Within a year and a half, I was married. I was trading. I had a baby. Within 2 years, I made my first million, and it was off to the races.
So, okay, this did not go the way I thought it was going to go. So you actually started in trading first.
Yes.
Then you took a detour.
Yeah.
to do this, this other thing.
Yes.
I mean, was that before you got into the trading? Was this like a life path that you had considered was something that you were probably going to do with your life, and you just kind of delayed it, and then you finally got started?
Like I grew up in an Irish neighborhood in the city, Italians and Irish neighborhood in Chicago, and like any other Catholic kid, I went to Catholic high school. I went to Catholic grammar school, Catholic high school. We went to mass every Sunday with my family. So I was an altar boy. So I was always kind of attracted to that. More important, I was always kind of attracted, like drawn to our faith. But as I grew up, I drifted away like many people do, and came back and drifted away, and then I just started to really kind of examine who I am and who I want to be and what I want my life to be like. And being a 21, 22-year-old guy, it was fun making a bunch of money and running around cabareting and bouncing around from joint to joint on the weekends. But it was not fulfilling. And I knew that there was something more than that. I knew there was something more for me.
Right.
I didn't know what it was, so I thought maybe I'd give it a shot in the seminary.
So you figured pretty early on that maybe you wouldn't get much meaning or purpose out of a career working at CBOT?
Yes. CME. I was at CME, but yes.
CME, sorry. And then do you still feel that way today, looking back?
No. Actually, that's been part of that was a very difficult part of my journey. I was, when I first started my career, I was at the right place at the right time with a modicum of talent and a decent intellect. So I was able, and I was a great clerk. So I was able to kind of put all of that together. And I went into the NASDAQ pit right when the NASDAQ was taking off. It was a brand new pit. I was one of the first people in there, and I grew with it. So I made a ton of money very quickly. And I remember I bought a lake house. I'm 29 years old. I bought a lake house in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. And I remember sitting, this is Y2K, 30 years old. I'm sitting on the back deck of my lake house with two little babies and my ex-wife. And I'm thinking, who am I, man? I mean, what good do I provide the world? What service, do I provide? How am I changing the world? 3-4 years ago, I was in the seminary and I wanted to bring faith, hope, and love into people's lives. I wanted to help bring joy into people's lives. What am I doing but making my wife and my family wealthy, rich? I was making them rich. Difference between being wealthy and rich. I learned that as I progressed. I had to go broke to learn that story.
What's the difference?
To be rich is I'm going to be attached to worldly things. I'm going to be attached to my cars, to my houses, to my watches. I'm going to be attached to, I'm only going to be with, as you young guys say, dime pieces. To be wealthy means to be a man of faith, hope, and love. And then, however much money I have is how much money I have. I drive nice cars. We live in a nice home. We take nice vacations. My kids all go to school with no mortgage. I mean, no debt. Mortgage anyway, same thing. I have no debt, that kind of stuff. But none of those things are important to me. If all those things were gone tomorrow, my wife and I would be incredibly happy. My kids would be very happy, healthy, and whole. That's real wealth. I'm a free man, and I'm a free man because of my faith, hope, and love, and I grow in that every day. I'm also free because I make a lot of money, and I'm very good at what I do. But I'm good at what I do for the right reasons. And that makes me ultimately wealthy. That makes me free. I've had more money in my life, Steve, but I've never been wealthier.
Good for you, man. I think this is some awesome wisdom for people to hear.
Thank you.
All right, so let's go back again.
The fulfilling moment.
Yeah, you started in trading, and then you got into your faith and experienced that for sounds like a handful of years. What was it that brought you back to trading?
Yeah.
So when I left, my mother was sick with cancer, lung cancer, and I left. I thought, well, what am I going to do? Where am I going to go? So I would work vacations, a week here, a week there. I'd go back and I'd clerk for the guy that I had worked for before, Steve Mendez, SRG Financial, who was the biggest broker in the front month euros at the time. And for vacations, give a guy a week off, give a guy a 2 week off, that kind of thing. And so I walked down to the floor one day. I didn't know what to do. I'm not going back to school right now. I was going to go to Rome for my last 4 years. I just finished what they call minor seminary. So I got my degree in philosophy. I did it in 3.5 years. And at that point, I was going to go to Rome for my last 4 years for my master's, and you can't come home for 2 years. I wasn't going to do that with my mother newly diagnosed with stage 3 lung cancer. So I just went back to the Merck. And then I started dating. Started dating legally. When I was dating in the seminary, it was kind of illegal dating. So that was kind of fun, so that was cool. And then I ended up falling in love with the woman that became the mother of my 2 oldest kids. And we were married for 6.5 years. And we divorced in 2003. 2003, 2004, and I've been married for the last 20 years to the love of my life, and we have 3 kids. So I've got 5 kids total.
Wow.
So I went back to the Merck because what else was I going to do? That's what I like doing. That's what I was, I was really good at it. I knew I was really good at it. So I just went back to it.
But really, what I'm hearing is if it wasn't for your mother being ill, you probably would have stayed the course at seminary, and your life would look a lot different today, maybe.
Yeah. But God had other plans.
That's awesome.
What year was that when you came back to the markets for good?
96.
96. Okay.
95, 96, in between them.
All right. And then you mentioned you divorced your first wife in 2003. I don't want to make this connection, but I think that maybe
it was a 2-year process. We had a very big network so it took a 1.5 for us to unwind our marriage.
Okay. So forgive me for drawing some connections here, but I think there might be a connection.
What, everybody on our show gets divorced at least once?
No.
That's not it?
Okay. No. A while back, a few weeks back, Matt, you had put something up on Twitter, and I'm not going to read the whole post, but you did mention that on January 3rd, 2001, Greenspan did a surprise rate cut. A rate cut. And you lost $1.5 million in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And that was money that you never even dreamed of having 3 or 4 years prior to that.
When was this?
The very first trading day of the year, 2003. Greenspan cut interest rates by 50 basis points. It was a surprise rate cut on literally the first trading day of the year. In the middle of the day, it was at 10:30 Central Time, so 11:30 Eastern Time. I came in late, and I'm kind of sauntering in. It's the day after, the day after New Year's. It's Monday. Literally the first. New Year's Eve was Friday. Saturday was the first. Sunday the second. Monday the third. We open, and Greenspan cuts rates on the first by 50 basis points. A surprise cut, which, by the way, the 50% cut that Powell did last time at all-time highs. This was a surprise cut on the first trading day of the year. Why did he do that the first trading day of the year? Is because there was no liquidity in the market. So I was short 28 NASDAQ, and we rallied 650 points. It's 26%. We rallied 26% in a minute, 2 minutes. There was no out. No out.
And so when you lost that huge nut, was this while you were going through your divorce, or was this right before it?
It was just before it.
So I'm sure that didn't help.
Oh, I'll never forget that. I'll never forget how I went home and I told my wife at the time.
What'd you say?
I was wearing a pair of khaki pants and Rockport, comfortable, sensible Merck floor guy shoes, and a Notre Dame V-neck pullover, like a gold Notre Dame gold Notre Dame V-neck pullover. And I came home and I said, I have good news and bad news. We just put $2 million with this with her dad's stockbroker, and a year before that, our stock portfolio was in the shitter. I said, I got the good news is our stock portfolio is up. We rallied 26%. What's the bad news? Well, we have to liquidate a large part of it. I lost $1.5 million today. Jesus, what's that mean? And while I was doing that, I was taking my clothes off and slowly putting them into the garbage can. I'm real superstitious about things. Like the desk behind me is where I built. It's ratty and crappy and it looks terrible, but I rebuilt my career on that desk. So I'm going to keep that desk until I'm no longer trading for active income. And my clothes I took off slowly while I'm telling her all of this, and just kind of depositing one piece at a time into the garbage can. And my daughter was a little girl. Genevieve was 27 now, was a little kid at the time, kept pulling the shit out of the garbage can and putting it on, like she was putting on daddy's clothes. So because I had a good attitude about it, my ex-wife wasn't stressed about it. She's like, okay, well, and she knew how much money I was making at the time. So it wasn't destructive. It could have been destructive. When that happened, I gave my trading, when I got out of my position, I gave my trading cards to one of my clerks, and one was checking my trades, the other one was keeping my count, and another one was doing my P&L. I went down to the Chicago Mercantile Exchange Club and I had a cigarette. I smoked the ash off like this. The ash was hanging off of it, never fell off. I did a shot of Jameson and I came back on the floor like 10 minutes later and I asked him, how much am I down? Or I asked him, where am I? And he knew what that meant. I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out now. Well, how much? I don't know. And he got pissed at me. Anywhere between $1 million and 10 million. I don't know. And I remember thinking, okay, if it's, $1 million, 2, 3, 4 million, I can deal with that. 10 million, I might be in trouble. And then I came back 15 minutes later, it was $1.5 million, and I was so relieved. Okay.
You were relieved to only be down $1.5 million.
Because look, what's the main goal that the main goal that each of us ought to have, whether we're trading for 25 years or 27 years like I am, or we're trading for, 27 months or 27 days, the only goal that we should have at the end of the day is to live to fight another one. So when I found out it was $1.5 million, I knew that I lived to fight another day. That's all I needed, and I was debit $650,000, but I had a piece of the clearing firm at the time, the FCM, and we had a big meeting in the morning. They had a meeting with the guys in New York, and they didn't want me to trade the next morning. They didn't want me to trade until I had over $1 million in my account, and I told them that it'll take a week. I need to be in that pit tomorrow. I can't afford to have these other traders smell blood. Everybody was talking about how I lost 20 million, 10 million. Whenever there's an outlying event like that, there's always a horror story. I was the horror story, and the stories are always exaggerated.
Right.
So I needed those guys to see the whites of my eyes. I needed to be able to stand in that pit without sweat, without tears, and I needed to trade like a man. And so they allowed me to do that. And I went in there the next day, trade like an adult. And I went in the next day and I did.
So Matt, that was 20 years ago. Have we completely lost that dynamic in modern day financial markets? In other words, it used to literally be like a poker match in some ways, right? Where you needed to put on some sort of a face that next day and act like what happened the day before didn't happen. Oh, yeah, is that completely gone with no floor and everything being done on a machine these days?
Yes. On the trading floor, I competed with everybody. I competed with the banks. I competed with the firms. I competed with every trader and every broker in that pit. On the screens, I just compete with myself. And in some ways, that's a bigger war and a harder war because it's more insidious. I know how to deal with the strengths and the weaknesses of other people. Yeah. Sometimes it's very difficult for me to deal with my strengths and weaknesses. My ego gets the better of me. That's why I try to propagate the same kind of charism on Twitter that I live by. I try not to live in ego. I felt like all this political nonsense going on. I find myself getting really opinionated and commenting on Twitter, and then I take the tweets down because I know that that's about my ego. Oh, I'm smarter than that guy. That guy's a moron, whatever. And when I start to make it about me, then I am not productive. I'm not good to my family. I'm not good to the people in my trading group. I'm just not good. And I'm not going to be the best version of myself. And if that's the case, then I'm setting myself up for destruction of the markets. If that's the case, then my weaknesses are in the background, doing push-ups, getting stronger. While I take my eye off of them, my ego is going to pounce on my ass, and I'm going to start building negative momentum to where I start spiraling down the toilet bowl without me even realizing it.
Wow.
So my ego has no place in my trading. That's the battle. On the floor, I can battle with all the other people. I was good at that. I was faster, bigger than them.
So when did you move off the floor and start going screen-based trading?
Oh, kind of like the seminary. I was going to make it work no matter what. So I stayed until MF Global failed in 2011.
I was there. Yeah.
Oh, it was horrible.
Yeah. John Corzine. Shout out New Jersey. So how has like how did you adapt? What was that transition like? You're talking about you used to be able to easily identify who you were facing off against in a trade, and that was an edge for you. Now it's completely faceless. You feel like you're just against yourself, and you feel like that you lost that edge. How did you adapt?
Well, I was a really big trader too. So I moved the NASDAQ. All I had to do was put my hands up even offer, and everybody else was 90 offer, 80 offer. And I put my hands up half bid, they're 60 bid, 70 bid. I mean, that didn't always work that way, but quite often it did. And I can, if I started selling them and I started to sell evens and sell 90s and 80s, and then that's gonna, I'm gonna paint the tape down tick 60s and 50s, that's gonna start to create negative momentum, quite like the algorithms do now. The algos do the same thing that we did on the floor. What was your original question, Steve? I lost sight of it.
You basically answered it in a way with this, but really, how did you adapt from that big change from the floor to the screens?
It was very difficult. Necessity is the mother of all invention. So after MF Global failed and a couple of million went out the window, and I didn't know if I was getting it back. Eventually, I got most of it back, but not all of it, by the way. Most of it, and it took 3 years, something like that, 2.5, 3 years. Anyway, I didn't know what was going on, so I started to piss away 100,000 at a crack. I started to trade 100 lots and 200 lots on the screen because, hey, listen, I can do that in the pit. I can do it on the screens. Before you know it, broke. We're broke. Sold our house, moved back to the city, all kinds of stuff. So I had a wife and 5 kids that relied on me. I had gotten my first check from MF Global back a few months later. No, it was a lot longer than a few months, but we rented a house in Biscayne, Florida, and my wife and I, who was a clerk at the Merck for a long time, sat down and talked about what to do. Do I become an attorney? Do I become a therapist? Too late to be a priest. So what do we do? She said, well, you were the king of the NASDAQ when I met you. Go figure it out. King of the NASDAQ. I feel like the world's biggest loser in the world. I don't believe in myself. I believe in you. They believe in you. That ought to be enough. And it was enough. So I sat down and on the screens, and what worked for me on the floor? Well, I traded the opening range breakouts to where, and I started to do the same thing. I started to trade the opening range breakouts with one lots. Where are they taking the market? I started to trade the S&P because it was less jumpy, so less expenses. Where are they taking the market? And I started to trade, according to what worked. And then I started to do the technicals the way that I was taught to by two of my mentors, three of them really, and one indirectly, Howard Green, and two directly, Judd Hirschberg and Ari Harrison. And I just stayed true to that and just tried to figure out, okay, now how do I manage my positions? What is the most optimal use of my money with very little outlay? I don't risk money. I don't lose money. I spend money and I have expenses. How do I adapt my mindset to trading so that I don't get into that negative, pattern of building negative momentum in my life? Well, I spend money. If I've got $100,000 in my account, that's not money I'm willing to lose. It's not risk capital. I'm not going to, willing to lose 100 grand. But I'll spend 5 of that to try to make 20, or whatever, spend 1,000 to make 3 or 4. And so I started to change some of the wording around so that it kind of fit my mind. And I just stayed to that. I don't veer from it. I don't try to blend methods into my method. I just stay true to my method. I don't change it. And if there's a secret to all of this, there's no secret. But if I've got a superpower as a trader, it's the ability to be able to miss moves and to not care. I don't care. I missed a large part of that rally off of the COVID lows at 2174 in the S&P. I missed a large part of that rally because I just didn't believe that the market was going to keep going. Didn't care. I played a lot of golf. I worked out and ran a lot. I got in great shape. I didn't care.
Hell yeah.
When I saw people that I've known for decades blow up, fighting around.
A lot of us missed it. When I look back at the V-shaped bottom from COVID, I don't feel bad about it.
Either. But in real time, I didn't care. Other guys are fighting the rally. I sat and watched guys that I knew that were incredibly well capitalized blow their whole lives up fighting that rally.
Yep.
Why? Well, we're not going lower. Then why aren't you getting along? I don't.
So Matt, I imagine you have probably seen that documentary that was made about 10 years ago called Floored. Remember, you saw that? I imagine you probably knew many of those people that were in there. As a guy like yourself who's made it to the other,
about most of them.
What's that?
I knew them all, and I have really good stories about most of them.
Okay, I'm sure you do. So, as a guy like you, who, it wasn't easy, but you made the transition. You are here now. You're thriving. You're doing well. It's got to be weird for you to look back and know some of those guys who did not make the transition. They could not find a way to make money off of the floor. And you probably talk to some of those guys still. I mean, what's that vibe like when you talk to those old school guys?
Truthfully, I try to avoid it. I don't need that negativity in my life. I do talk to a lot of floor guys. I have a lot of floor trader friends that are still in my life. But for the most part, we've all been able to adapt either in this business or outside of this business. So we're all, I was never I didn't like that documentary, by the way.
I didn't like it either.
It didn't portray us in a very positive light. It portrayed us in the negative sense.
Hey, guys, they never do. Thanks, Hollywood.
Right. But that was made by a couple of traders. So Joe Gibbons, the guy in the pink jacket, do you remember the guy in he wore a pink jacket on the floor. Joe Gibbons wore a suit, dressed really nice. He's in there. He was one of the producers, and Joe's a great guy. I wasn't in it because I was in another documentary that actually will be coming out in the fall or winter of this year called Futures Past, that was made by Leo Malamed, the man that is responsible for all of us trading. His son, Gordy Malamed, is a Hollywood filmmaker. So I'm in that one.
Oh, wow. You're making news here. I didn't know there's a new doc coming out. This is great.
Yeah.
I'm all for it. More documentaries about our industry.
Yeah, this will be a good one. It's Leo. I tweeted about Leo's last book called Man of the Futures. I think everybody that's listening to this and anybody that's trades, futures or options, I think you got to know who Leo is. He's the man who invented this. He's 94 years old, still trades S&P every day. Hasn't needed the money. He has not needed the money since the 70s, and that man still trades every day.
I never knew Leo, but he and I used to share machines at the East Bank Club. We used to work out together.
Just say, thank you, Leo.
Yeah, that's a thing too. The best ones, the most successful ones, it's something about how they all seem to be wired. They don't retire.
No, I won't ever retire.
Yeah,
I won't. Trading for active income is something that I don't necessarily do, or I won't do, but I'll never not trade. Never.
How about, as you get older, are you comfortable? Because I wonder about this stuff. Like, will it ever get better for me? Like, when you go on vacation, can you go away with your family and disappear, take a cruise and not have internet? Or will that still bother you?
No, it doesn't.
It's like, you've made it, you're good, right? Like, can you go away and just fully enjoy yourself? Or are you checking futures the first thing every morning?
No, I don't. We go every year. We go to the first 2 weeks of the year. We're on vacation someplace. This year we're going to Mexico. Where in the hell?
Did you completely unplug for it?
Completely unplug. Yeah, I don't trade. I have CQG integrated client as my trading front end. I took CQG app off my phone a long time ago. If I'm playing golf or if I'm working out, I don't. I'm short from 20, not 28. I'm short from 58.02 half and 58.90, and I've got scratch stops. And the market is going to come up and scratch me out, or it's going to break.
Right.
Looking at the screen is not going to help me manage that position. It's going to do one of two things. It's going up and it's going to stop me out for a scratch, or it's going to go down to 57 even and put money into my pocket. Staring at my phone while I'm playing golf isn't going to help. And I have not initiated a trade outside of my desk in a very long time.
That's awesome. Were you always that way?
No.
I know. But
No,
I have a joke
last
among
10 years I have been. Last 10 years I have been.
See, that's nice. That sounds good. That's promising for me. There's a joke among my golf buddies that nobody wants to be in the cart with me because if I'm not swinging, I'm not watching. I'm on my phone, I'm not watching their shot. So they all hate playing with me.
Well, you're young,
Yeah.
you're young. When I was your age, how old are you, Steve?
36.
So when I was your age, we had, I think I had a cell phone by then, but we had beepers in like the late 90s that
Yeah.
were state of the art. They had the markets on them. So, we go out and a bunch of, look at me, I'm a trader. I'd be looking at that shit constantly. Um,
Right.
After a while, it just got to the point that it became counterproductive. If I'm not in front of the screens and I don't have the attention and the intention to trade, then
Yeah.
I don't need to be thinking about it. I need to be thinking about how I'm going to do better, be better, just be the best version of myself that I can be.
This
Staring at the screen is not going to help me do that.
this talk about, being able to step away from the markets when you're on vacation is triggering me right now because literally about 2 hours ago, I literally just purchased my flights and my hotel for a vacation me and my family are going to do in Jamaica in February. And I'm already sweating it. I'm like, oh shit, I'm going to have positions on. What am I going to do? Because I'm not good at disconnecting.
I'll leave, I'll leave positions on. If I have stuff on, I'll leave them on. I'll leave stops in, and that's it. And I'll call one of the people that work for me and say, am I short? Am I out? What am I long? What's going on? Yeah, you're still short. Oh, cool. See ya. If I'm flat, I won't talk to anybody.
Do you still talk to a broker?
No,
You don't.
no. The only time I ever hear from anybody is when I have, yeah, when I've got a pretty big position on, and they'll call me and say,
Yeah.
you're short. Well, whatever.
You're making
Same
us
with me.
nervous, Matt.
Yeah. Well, and then I remind them of the T-bills that I have indemnifying my accounts, and they leave me alone.
I'm the same way. Unless I'm selling too many puts, I don't hear from my broker.
Yeah. I don't want to, there's nothing that they're going to, some 25-year-old kid is not going to help me.
So, Matt, you mentioned something earlier, and I feel like this is something we need to really go down this rabbit hole a little bit, is that you said that back when you were a floor trader, your edge was you were able to read the room, so to speak, right? You could see the whites of the other guy's eyes. They could see yours. You knew how to read the market in that way. Now, as a screen-based trader, you and everyone else, all the rest of us who are screen-based traders, the real battle we're fighting is in our head.
Yeah.
And, you've had some pretty notable big ups and downs over the years. So I'm curious if you've learned any, I hate to use the word tricks, but if you've learned some shortcuts to, how to rewire yourself when you find yourself spinning, like, oh shit, you're going down this bad spiral, your ego's taken over, your revenge trading, all that. Any tips on how you get yourself out of that? Is it just a matter of just taking a break?
I just had this. I had this exact conversation. Tuesday, it's today, Wednesday. Yesterday, with one of my oldest friends from the floor, a guy that I met as a brand new clerk who's in my trading group. He's starting to trade again. The only way that I know how to rewire, how I knew how. Oh, to go back to your question about floored. I always had a trading process. A lot of guys on the screen, a lot of guys on the floor relied on their relationships with other brokers or traders and things to make money. I always had a method and a process. That was my edge. And the fact that my brain can take in a ton of information and act on it decisively very quickly, and I've got a near photographic memory, so that helps too. I'm dyslexic, so when I think about with numbers, I have to picture them in my mind. But once I picture them in my mind, I don't forget them. I can tell you trades that I made in 2001. Okay, so with all that said, I had to rewire my brain and I had to rewire my body after I had gone broke in 2012. When I started in 2013 trading on the screens, I had to live differently. I had to think differently. I had to trade differently, and I had to be different. I went from trading 100 lots and 200 lots to 1 lots and 2 lots. And my only goal every day was to be positive, green. That's it. $50 or $100. At that point, it wasn't life-changing, but it was important. And it was going to go somewhere to pay some bills. That was my only goal. 1 lots, 2 lots, $50, $100, $200. And when I started to do that consistently, and I started to refine my process again a little bit on the screens, I knew that the $200 would turn into 2,000, and I knew the 2,000 would turn into 20, and the 20 would be 200, because it had been those things in the past, and I knew from experience that it would be those things again. So
But Matt, you knew you were in a new environment. You basically paper traded for a little while, right?
Yes.
Like maybe you paid your electricity bill, but you were paper trading.
Yes. Yeah. And then I trading very small too. I mean, honest to God, see, my only goal was to be green. I didn't give a shit how much, because I knew that would turn into large amounts of money. So, now one of the ways that I keep from, like I said earlier, ego is going to kill me. My ego is going to destroy me. I've got a big ego, and I know I'm good at this, and I know that could really, really hurt me. I need to be confident, but without ego, and I need to be supremely confident. If there's one character trait that all of us share, it is a deep-seated self-confidence, the kind of self-confidence that whatever life throws at us, we'll be okay. We'll survive it. We'll find a way. We'll work through it. We all need to have that sort of self-confidence and that belief in ourselves. So the best way that I mean, there's little things that I do, like if I get to I don't have a loss limit, I've got a round turn limit. If I get to that round turn limit, then I'll get up and I'll go make a pot of tea. I'll get up. I've got a treadmill in my office. I'll get on the treadmill and walk a little bit. I need to get away from my screens so that they don't have like a hold on me. I can break that spell.
So you have a routine when things aren't going well. You have like an established routine that you follow.
Absolutely. And I talk to other traders. I work with a bunch of traders from my trading group and from the PAX group, and I work with them. There's an old saying, you have to kind of give it away to keep it. And that's one of the ways that I help ensure that I'm not going to do to myself and to my family what I did in 2012. Yeah, I tweet about this a lot, and I always get the same responses. But I can't tell you how many people I know that have been worth $5 million, $10 million, $20 million, $50 million that have gone broke. And I mean, I literally cannot tell you how many, because there's been so many of them. Oh, I'm different. Once I get to 10 million, that's the end of it. Once I get 5 million, I'm done. That's always the response I get. Or, don't you use stops?
Yes. Are there any commonalities in those situations?
Sure. Yeah. I can guarantee you that this business will change. You know what?
Failure to adapt.
Yeah, right. Exactly. The business will change. And what are you going to do when it changes? I didn't adapt. I fought it. I can guarantee you that your life is going to change, and it will fall apart. People, relationships end. People die. Pain becomes exacerbated. Drinking, drugs, food, sex, whatever kind of appetite or addiction we want to place in our lives. For me, it was smoking. I smoked my brains out until 2013. All kinds of shit like that will take hold and take root in you, and you will have to battle that on top of battling the things that we all have to battle. So we've got to stay on top of ourselves. We've got to every day, we've got to take care of our mind, our body, and our spirit. Every single day, I work out, I play golf, I eat healthy, I don't drink. I do all of these things over and over and over and over again, and I work with other people. It's like living the 12 steps. I'm not an alcoholic, but living the 12 steps in a life of a trader, so that I stay out of my own mind and I stay out of my own soul, and I stay focused on correcting my past mistakes and stay focused on continually doing better and being better.
Well, here's what I truly believe. As somebody who's familiar with the 12-step process, the good ones are all addicts, right? And you have to figure out a way to control that disease, right? And not let it work against you. Because if you're good at the market and you're taking money from the market on a regular basis, you're probably addicted to the market. And that's something you have to address simultaneously to keep that alive.
Very wise. Very, 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 very wise, Steve. I've been addicted to that market for a long time too, and I had to break that.
When did you figure it out? When did you have that moment? Like, oh, there's something here. There's a linkage between my personal life, right, and my personal mental portfolio, and then my market life and my actual portfolio.
Gradually over time. When I started trading on the screens, I was overweight. I was bloated. I was drinking too much. I was still smoking a lot in 2013. And I wasn't praying, I kind of had I had a big crisis of faith, like Job, why me, dude?
Yep.
Come on, I did good things with all that money, why me? Why us? So, um, I bought I mean, literally, like I just started to do things. I bought a pair of running shoes and I started to walk around my block and then I ran around it and then I ran twice around it and then I started to run. And when I started to run, I started to feel better. I started to lose a little of that bloatedness. I stopped smoking. Eventually, I stopped smoking. Slowly over time. And then I joined Planet Fitness, a sawbuck a month, $10 a month. Who can't afford $10 a month to get healthy? So I was waking up to trade like the European opening range in the Europe market, DAX, and then with that work, or maybe I trade the S&P, trying all kinds of shit. So now that I was just trading the U.S. Open at 8:30 Central, 9:30 your time, I'm up at 4 a.m. So I may as well go to Planet Fitness and work out, and so that all whittled into like a process of living my life so that I can stay to my trading process. And then I started to go to, we started to go to church again every Sunday with the kids. And then I started to go in the morning after my workouts. And, all of these things just kept building positive momentum in my life. I'm always on the lookout, like I said earlier, for building negative momentum. And I'm always constantly trying to keep that positive momentum going.
Matt, I love that you brought up, or one of you brought up, the 12 steps. And I think something that's underappreciated about the 12 steps is this isn't one of the steps, but in AA, they talk about the serenity prayer.
Yeah.
And I think as traders, the serenity prayer hits home hard, right?
Yeah, dude, we can't control anything important.
No,
right.
We don't control the market. The market's going to do what we're going to do. The market's going to do what it's going to do. I can't control it. I used to think I could, but I can't now. The only thing I control is my reaction to it, how I see it, how I act in it, and what I do next. Do the right thing, the next right thing. That's the only thing I can control. And then God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference, and the wisdom to know.
But this is the most beautiful thing about God and religion, Sean, for someone who's not on board with it, is that there are corollaries. Like it's not just about the thing that they tell you it's about. It's about how to live a fulfilled and meaningful life in the right way. Like you're saying, it's a beautiful prayer. And as a trader, you listen to it and you're like, oh my God, of course. But like, that's what it's all about. Even AA meetings, it's not about how to stop drinking. It's about just how to not be a douchebag.
Right.
Like how to be like a good dude on a regular basis. And then that flows through. And I love the conversation we're having with Matt today, because we're talking about this linkage between how we do well in our career and how we do well in our personal life, and how they're not different. One feeds the other and the other one feeds the other one back, and it's circular. So
absolutely. Well said.
No, I love that. And Matt, I've been following you on Twitter for a while. I've listened to you on some various Twitter spaces and things like that. So I've heard you talk many times. Can I talk about your relationship with your current wife a little bit? It sounds like she is just this angel that has come into your life and really helped you become the guy that you are now. Can we talk about that a little bit?
Please, yeah, absolutely. I might get teary-eyed. I could not be more in love with my wife than I couldn't be happier. That doesn't mean that we don't argue or get hurt egos or feelings every so often, because we do. But I mean, we have a great relationship, and I honestly don't think I'd be alive if I didn't marry her. I really don't.
Yeah, I've heard you say this before. Like this is some deep stuff. This isn't just like a guy saying he loves his wife. I mean, you have a real strong connection, and I feel like she has a really big part in helping you be successful in the way you are. Not because she is a trader expert, but because she knows you.
Oh, not only. Yeah. Oh no, go ahead, Steve.
No.
Not only that, I mean, yeah, just the regular relationship stuff, but she manages my trading accounts. If I'm at the end of the week, one of the things that I'm big on is making sure that I'm growing my personal accounts, not my trading accounts. It's easy for me to say at this point too, but if I make money, and I always suggest in Capital Preservation Friday on Twitter, I always suggest people take out the money that they make out of their trading accounts. Right now, in my mind, if I take a big chunk of money out of my trading account, I'm going to have that in my mind, and that's going to make me maybe trade that P&L and not trade the market. So I don't want to be aware of that. Plus, I'm not real detailed when it comes to managing my tax accounts, whereas she is. She's much more detailed about all that shit. I don't want to be mindful of what our monthly bills are. I just want to be able to trade. I want to be free of having to think about my P&L. I want to trade the market and not think about the money. And my wife ensures that I'm able to do that. But Jen also, I've got friends like anybody else, but I don't want to be with anybody. I don't want to. This might sound strange, but I love being with my wife. I love being with. We spend a lot of time together. I love being with her. I love being with our kids. I love being with all 5 of my kids. I love being a father. I love being a husband. We are all created. We are all created to be in relationship, I had a rough marriage, and that really, my first marriage really hurt me, and it took a long time for me to get over, the feelings of, just all of that, just the whole thing. But as hard as that was, my 20-year marriage to my wife Jen has really, I don't know, it saved me, man. I'm the most blessed man alive. It saved me.
It saved you, and it saved your accounts.
every week it does. Every month it does. Well, maybe not every week, but every month it does.
No, that's beautiful. I'm a little bit jealous, I think, because I too have been married for 23 years now, and my wife and I have a great relationship, but me and my wife, it's different about my trading. We don't talk about my trading because we learned a long time ago that, when I'm having a good run, I'll kind of talk to my wife about it, and maybe it comes off as bragging or something, or who knows. Inevitably, every single time, immediately following that conversation is when I have a terrible losing streak. So we have a rule now that's been in place for probably 10 years now, where we just told her
she's bad luck. She's bad luck.
Yeah, so we just don't talk about it anymore. And, on the one hand, that's good. But on the other hand, maybe it would help me if I had that outlet of someone close to me that I could really share it with. And so when I hear you tell these stories, it touches me.
We don't talk about it either. Well, I don't want to know. She'll say to me sometimes, "Oh, you had a really good week." Yeah, I know. I know I did. But, that's enough. I
don't jinx it.
Yeah, no, not it's not that anymore. I don't want to know. I don't want to know how good. I don't want to. Well, I hesitate in putting numbers out there because I don't want people to. But if I made $100,000, then I'm going to be thinking, oh, really, I made 100. Fucking really, that's awesome. And and now maybe I'm going to be a little bit too big on Monday. Because I'm so good, or maybe I'm going to be a little too aggressive in the wrong spots on Monday because Friday I had a big day, or if she took that money out of my account, I'm thinking, oh God, really? I'm like that much money? I better hurry up and make that back. So we really don't talk about it. When I'm done, I come up and how was your day? It was okay. How was yours, baby? Good. Or today sucked. We're not doing anything. That kind of thing. Or I didn't trade for 3 weeks until yesterday. I caught that, and I talked about that on Twitter. Rollover, I don't trade rollover. And then we had 2 weeks of rollover, and then we had expiration week. And then after expiration, we sat. I don't trade those weeks. I wait for the beginning of the quarter, and I trade that, and I'm ready for it. And
so your full futures and only futures, to be clear.
Yes.
Are you talking about rollover? I did about what you guys are talking about. I have 2 things on this. First of all, I'm trying to figure out right now, like you just said, Matt, after I have a really good week, how do I not have a really bad week? That seems to be a problem for me. Can't figure it out. Can't seem to figure it out. And then also, when it comes to significant others, I think you guys are right. You shouldn't talk about it. I told my girlfriend last week about how good the week was. She went down to Duval Street and bought a piece of artwork. It seems to be, it's a trend. It's a trend at this point. I don't talk about my bad weeks. I should. I don't know what she'd do if I started talking about my bad weeks. Maybe I'd be getting refunds from Amazon. I don't know. But I talk about my good weeks only. And then it's already gone. It was a good week. It's already gone. And then I lost it this week. So who's the loser now?
Yeah, well, that's true. I just bought a new car, Um, and I did that purposely during rollover. I waited until rollover. I knew I was going to trade. If you buy, if it's the same thing as taking money out of your account, it's the same
Yeah.
thing. You go buy a new car, you got the price of that car in your head, and you're gonna, I know for me because I've done it before. I'm going to run the risk of losing that kind of money, and I don't want to. I don't want to lose that kind of dough. I got to hurry up and I got to make the price of that car back. No, no good. So we waited until a period. We always do it whenever we buy a new car or make a major purchase in a time in a cycle that I know that I'm not going to be trading. If she goes and buys a piece of artwork, we're not art collectors, but if she goes and buys something like
Me
that,
either.
then
Okay.
then I just don't tell me about it. I don't want to know. She can go buy whatever she wants to. I just don't want to know it.
Got it.
Because
Matt,
it's my head.
Matt, this begs the question. You didn't say this, but I'm guessing this is the case. On an intraday basis, while you're trading, when you're actively trading, do you not have your P&L up on the screen? Are you not aware of where you're at?
I'm aware that I'm up or down money and significantly, but no, I don't have my P&L up on my screens ever.
But but you have an idea.
Yeah, yeah. I try not to think about it. And after not having it up and not not focusing on it for so long, I mean, I know I'm up money and I know I'm having a really good day, or I'm not having a good day. I better shut it down. I don't look at my P&L when I'm having a shitty day either. I don't want to see when I'm down because then, well, fuck, I'll take one more trade. Just one more trade.
What you're describing is process over resulting.
100%. All the time, 100% of the time, never waver from it.
Yeah, you mentioned
thing.
You mentioned it earlier. It sounds like the only metric you follow intraday is how many round trips you've done.
Yes.
That's it.
It.
No, I like that.
Sean, we're winding down here. I have a topic that I would love to go back to if you don't have something else.
No, go ahead, please.
So you mentioned earlier when we were talking about starting out in the seminary and your early days in Chicago, you were at a lake house and you were thinking to yourself, how do I get fulfillment out of what I'm doing? And we kind of cut you off and asked you a million different questions since then. How did that go?
It wasn't a straight. It was not a straight line. That didn't get resolved. That didn't get resolved until I went broke either.
Okay.
But I find fulfillment in I said this earlier: faith, hope, and love, and that's the three theological virtues. So my faith in God and love. Another word for God is love. So God loves me. I love God as best I can, and then because of that, I love my wife and I love my kids, and I spend a lot of time with them, and I love the people that God has placed in my life, and that gives me hope. I'm scared of what's going to happen. I've got two sons that are military age and three daughters that are, who knows what can happen. I'm scared of what kind of weaknesses we have opened ourselves up to in this country. Not only terrorist attacks, but horrorist attacks that it's not a matter of when, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when that I'm afraid of. But I live in hope and I live in faith and I live in love. And I know that in May, I almost died in May. I came very close to dying May 17th. And when that happened to me, I wasn't thinking about my money and I wasn't thinking about my cars. I was thinking about the love that I gave and the love that I received. I was thinking about my family,
the wealthy life that you've created for you and your family.
Yes. And I was okay with whatever happened that afternoon. I didn't want to die and I fought not to, but I was okay with it if it happened at that time. And I've been okay with it since. So, like I was talking about with my kids, well, any of us can get in a car accident, and pass. We all start dying the second we start living. It's a morbid way to think of it, but our bodies start to decay. Anyway, the point is that as long as I live in faith, hope, and love, I can survive anything, and I can if I can survive, then I can thrive through anything. We will adapt. Let's just think about what people are going through now in the mountains of North Carolina. I talked to a guy who used to be in my group, Carl Vittorino. So please keep him. His family is in your prayers. They lost everything. And his family was airlifted out of the mountains outside of Asheville. They were airlifted out, and he stayed to help look for other families. He told me today, man, you're not going to believe it, but whole families are gone. Whole
Yep.
families are wiped away. You know,
I'm with you. And on the hurricane stuff, I had somebody come to me the other day and said, this is nothing. I live in Florida. They said, oh, this is nothing that they're dealing with. It's not about that. These people don't have flood insurance. Their lives are over. They lost everything. You don't get it back.
right?
It was too inland, this one.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. That's true. That's another good way of putting it. But you know what? They've lost everything. But if they have faith, hope, and love, and they have their family, they can adapt to anything. They can slowly rebuild and slowly overcome. If they did it before, they can do it again. You know, and that's kind of the point that I was trying to make, is that, you know, we can adapt to the changing circumstances in our lives as long as we live that way. Like, you know, my religion. Yeah, I have a problem with overly religious people because they think that eradication of sin is holiness. Eradication, and you were making that point earlier, Steve, that is not holiness. Holiness is growing in love, becoming a better lover. That is holiness. You know, I led a rosary this morning on Twitter, and then I talked about the markets for 10 minutes afterwards. And as soon as I was done praying the rosary and I'm talking about the markets, F-bombs start flowing out of my mouth. You know, and I thought, well, fuck it. You know, if these people are if anybody is going to judge me because I'm swearing when I'm talking about the markets, I don't care. I could care less. Eradication of sin, you know, it's not holiness to me. I'm not going to live a scrupulous life and then look at me, how good I am.
I'm with you. Matt, I love your style. I'm moved by this conversation. I mean, seriously, your just attitude about life and your knowledge and understanding of how your personal life and everything that's going on there plays into your career and vice versa, I think is the best lesson that came out of our conversation today.
Yeah, Matt, and I believe in serendipity, and I think serendipity brought the three of us together. I've been following you on Twitter for a while. Steve and I happened to be in Chicago 2 weeks ago for an event, and I woke up in my hotel room that morning in Chicago, and I was catching up on stuff, and I was catching up on Twitter, and you, Matt, had wrote something that just really connected with me, and it just hit me. I'm like, wait a second, this guy's in Chicago. I don't know him. I would love to meet him. And I just cold reached out to you. You didn't know me. I cold reached out to you, invited you to our happy hour, thinking there's no chance in hell you were going to actually show up, but you did. And we had a great time hanging out. And now here you are participating in this podcast, and our audience is getting to meet you and getting to know you. And I think our community needs more people like you and people who are willing to be honest about what they go through. So really, I mean, truly, we appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Thanks, Sean. You know, I really do feel the same way too. You know, serendipity. When I get asked to those sorts of things, you know, all the time, and I never go to them. I never ever go to them. You know, thank you very much for thinking of me, but I can't. And that day, I was having dinner with my oldest daughter, like 2 miles away. So I figured, 5 o'clock, yeah, I'm meeting
Recording
Genevieve.
stopped.
I'm meeting Genevieve at 6, so I may as well stop in and see, meet everybody for a few minutes. It was cool.
That's awesome, and I'm bummed I wasn't there. Next time, Matt, I'm coming back out to Chicago soon, Sean.
Yeah, and you should go with me. We'll go together. I'll take you to the spots you missed because there's a whole bunch of spots that you missed, and there's a bunch of more traders out there we need to meet. And we could finally, have a full night with Matt. Have a nice dinner and continue this conversation.
We'll go to Kingston Mines.
Steve loved Kingston Mines. We took him there.
Great joint, man. That is a great joint.
So cool.
A great place.
Real character.
I have not. Is God, I haven't been there in 15 years, 20 years.
So this is that segment where now that Matt is gone, we can talk shit about him and how he just poured his heart out and was so, frankly, just so real about everything. I was really moved by that interview. I mean, that was so good. I say this every other week. I feel like at this point, it's the best one. This was so good. Sean, you told me before we started that I would especially like Matt. I know nothing about Matt coming into the interview. I've never met him. You told me he was a man of God. I thought, I'm not a priest. He's nothing like me. I love the way, more than anything, the linkage. It happened over and over and over again in our discussion tonight. how he would talk. We would ask him a question about markets, trading, his career, and it would come back to his life, his personal life, right? And how there was some sort of linkage there. He doesn't think about them like they're two different things. They're completely intertwined at all times. And I think that's the big takeaway, at least for me. There were a million great takeaways, but that's the big one about our conversation tonight.
No, I had a feeling he was going to be a great conversation. Like I said, when we were talking with him, I followed him on Twitter for a while, and so I was familiar vaguely with his story. And when I cold reached out to him to come meet us in Chicago for happy hour, I didn't actually think he would, and sure enough, he showed up. And just sitting with him talking, like, in fact, it's kind of funny. Everyone was at happy hour. There was a group of us. There was like 30 of us, but everybody left to go to the Pat Tillman thing.
Yeah.
And I knew Matt was coming. So I'm like, well, I'm going to stay at the bar just in case he shows up. I don't want him to show up and we're not here. And sure enough, he showed up about a minute after everyone had left. So I was there by myself and I'm feeling like an asshole. I'm like, oh man, I told him there'd be this big happy hour. And now he shows up. It's just me. So I had him one-on-one. He and I talked for like 10 minutes, maybe a little bit longer, maybe about half an hour. And another one of my friends showed up, and then there were three of us. We had a good conversation, and then everyone eventually came back, and then it was a great happy hour. But in that like 15, 20 minutes where I had him, just me and him, and I was just meeting him for the first time, I knew right away, I'm like, we have to get this guy on the podcast. This guy's got stories. He's got perspective. He's got philosophy. He's everything we want.
Well, Sean, I don't want to boil down to just simply this. First of all, you're the best cold reacher I know. Like if you need a cold introduction, find my man Sean, DM him, email him, he'll get it done, right? Like every time you're like undefeated. But when it comes to meeting somebody, and this happens a lot in our world, Sean, where we meet people who sometimes aren't who they say they are. It happens. It really does. Too much, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. Is the best sign of authenticity not that they fucked up so many times. Like the real successful guys who are truly wealthy and have done well in our space, they're not going to talk to you about how awesome they are. They're not going to talk to you about all their winners. They're going to tell you about their losers, how they blew all their money, how they got divorced, and it was a disaster for their family, what a mess it was. That's what they're focused on because it's a mindset of risk management. They're focused on the bad, not the good. Yeah. They're not the braggarts.
And I love that he's not even watching his P&L throughout the day. Like I should try more of that.
That's crazy. But again, that's just process over results, which is what they teach you in the textbooks. If you had a trading coach, that's exactly what they'd be telling you. Did you do it right? Did you trade your plan right? Don't look at the P&L. The P&L will come if you do it right.
Yeah. Well, this was definitely a home run of a conversation. And I hope that everybody, feels the same way that we feel about it. I mean, I feel like I got a lot out of it. I know you did. And I'm really excited about, forming a relationship with Matt. We're just now getting to know him. And I think we can do more stuff with him and hang out with him in the future. And then we're all going to be better off for it. So, dude, that was great. Great job.
That's the winning attitude of somebody in our field. Yeah. Period. That's the right mindset. Love that.
Right on.